Hello everyone, and welcome to your video on graphing inequalities. So I'm going to write an inequality here, not a very hard one. We have x plus y is less than or equal to -3. And what we are going to do is graph this equation. So I'm going to draw a graph for us. And as always, I'm just going to ish it. And we are going to take this equation and we're just going to forget about the inequality right now. So we're just going to rewrite this equation as x plus y equals -3. Even if this were just a plain old less than sign, we would still, for this step, we would just make it into an equal sign. In this case, it happens to be less than or equal to, which is fine. All right, so if we have x plus y equals -3, then we want to graph it. And I think that since these numbers are so small, the easiest way to graph it is just to make an xy chart. So if x is 0, for instance, then y would have to be -3. And if we had y being 0, then x would have to be -3. So there you go, nice little easy XY chart. So now let's put these dots on our graph. So x is 0, y is -3, that's about right here, 0, -3. And here we have x is -3, y is 0. So this will be -3, 0, okay? Now, before I connect these dots, I need to look at something. Up here, I have a less than or equal to sign. That means that we are looking for anything that is less than -3 or exactly equals -3. Well, when we did our calculation here to figure out where these dots were, we were assuming that it equaled -3, right? So we know that we want our final graph to include these exact points. So I know you're thinking, why are you making this sound so hard, Ms. DeLisi? Well, so we're just going to draw a line through those 2 points. My point here is that it is a solid line. If we did not have that equal than sign, if we just had a less than here, then we would make this into a dotted line, which means it includes everything up to that line, infinitely close to that line, but not exactly that line. But in this case, because we have equals, we make a solid line. Hopefully that'll become clearer to you, especially when we do the next problem. But let's finish this problem. Okay, so we drew our line, x plus y equals -3. It looks like a lovely line. But what we want to know is what is less than or equal to -3. And that means that we have to do some thinking. Are we talking about everything on this side of the brown line? Or are we talking about everything on this side of the brown line? And it is not clear by looking at it. Now, I have to say, this book makes it a little easy for you right now during linear equations. And so you might guess that you want this side of the line. We'll see if you're right. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a point, and I really like the origin. If I can get away with using the origin, that's what I do, because those numbers are 0, 0, which makes it so easy to calculate everything. But you want to pick a point. Could be any point. I could pick, 0, 5. I could pick 10, 10. I could pick 2.5. 0, 2.5, or 2.5, 0 rather. I could pick any point that I wanted to. But I'm going to pick 0, 0, which is clearly on one side of the line. And then I'm going to fill in my equation. Is it true that 0 plus 0, that's my x and my y value, is less than or equal to -3? Is 0 less than or equal to -3? No, it is not. So that means that this point is not on the side of the equation that we just figured out. So this is the part of the graph that is described by this line. Okay, so we graph the line. We decide if we're going to draw a solid line or a dotted line. Once we have the line, we pick a point, any point we want, on one side of the line. We stick it into the formula and see if it works. If it works, then that point would be on the correct side of the graph. If it doesn't work, it means we have to go to the other side of the graph. So the graph of this equation is this right here. And it's everything below this brown line forever and ever and all eternity. Okay, let's do another one. Because I think it's kind of hard when you're like putting it into words, you know what it is. Sometimes it's easier just to do it. So we're going to draw ourselves a graph and we need an equation. So here we'll do 3x minus y is less than 3. Okay, that's our equation. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change 3x minus y to equals 3. Okay, that way I can make my nice XY chart. And let's see, what sort of number should I use here? If I make x 0, then y is going to equal a negative 3, right? Because a negative 3 is a positive 3. Okay, good. And then if I make x 1, then that would be 3 minus 0 equals 3. So, 3 minus 0 equals 3. Yeah, that works. Okay, so let's graph it. So we have 0, negative 3. That's right here. 0, negative 3. And here we have 1, 0. 1, 0. Now, before we draw our line, go back and look at your original equation. Do you see how it's a less than sign, but not an equal than sign? That means that we're going to include everything up to this line, but not exactly this line. So I will draw my line dotted. That means that we're going to go right up to it, infinitely close to it, but we're not actually going to include the line. Okay, so now we pick a point, and I'm going to pick 0, 0, because I love to pick 0, 0. The only time I wouldn't pick 0, 0 is if, especially because I'm drawing my graphs freehand, if I were drawing a graph and this line looked awfully darn close to 0, 0, like I wasn't exactly sure what side of the line it was on, or maybe it's actually on the line, you know, if my drawing is not precise enough to be sure, then I might have to pick a different point. But in this case, I can go with 0, 0. So we're asking ourselves, 3 times 0 minus 0, is that less than 3? So 0, 0, is that less than 3? Yes, it is. So 0, 0 is in the correct part of this graph to be included in all the points that we're talking about. So everything on this side of the line is included in this equation. Everything on this side of the line is not included in this equation. All right, so hopefully that gives you a sense of how we do graphing of inequalities. You set it equal, you make an XY chart, you put your dots, you draw either a solid line or a dotted line, you pick a random point of your choosing, you see whether or not your equation works, and then that tells you which side of the line we're dealing with. That's all there is to it. Good luck.